Follow the people who really know what they're doing. That's all I do. Ray said to me, "Have you ever seen me broke?" I said, "No." He said, "Did you ever see me sick?" Never had. He said, "Do you think I'm a happy guy?" I said, "Yeah." Well, he said, "You know, you got to be one of the most miserable people I've ever met, Bob." And he said, "You're always broke." Yeah, and he said, "You're always sick." He said, "Your way's not working. Why don't you try mine?"
Your mind can conceive and believe your mind can achieve.
I have seen so many changes take place in people's lives. If you go over it often enough, you'll be just as convinced as I am.
I'll never forget it. It started on a Friday night, and I go in the seminar room and I sit down, and out walks on stage Bob Proctor. I didn't even know who he was, but the minute he started talking, it was like someone took my head off, shook it around, and put it back on, and everything I thought was true was just like upside down.
I met Bob 9 years ago. I was really at the bottom. I was $150,000 in debt, and he said, "If you'll do exactly what I tell you to do, everything will change."
So I remember when I first started being mentored by Bob, he's like, "You got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone, or if not, you're going to continue to stay stuck."
Mikey Seller here was a nanny, no business experience when she came to work with our company. She's the chief operating officer of our company today. And it's by studying this material.
Any of the people that work in our company, you're going to find out they are genuinely nice people. This is not a common or a normal environment. You've got people that have come from all different walks of life. They've come from various different parts of the world, and they've all come for the same reason. There's something in here that's attracting them. There's something they're in harmony with. There's something they want to get.
Spirit is for expansion and fuller expression. We always want to expand in a bigger way. We want to introduce ourselves to a part of ourselves we never even knew was there.
You got to take massive action. If you guys are going to create what you're capable of creating, you have got to go out and do. Like Emerson says, do the thing will give you power.
You see, when you work at this kind of a business, as many years as I've worked at it, you see a lot of different things. Follow the people who really know what they're doing. That's all I do. There's something absolutely phenomenal locked up in you, right in your core of your being.
There's a marvelous inner world that operates within you.
When you set a standard, you're coming from a frequency up here, so what you're going to attract is what's in that frequency. And when you make it a habit, your whole world is going to change.
Give up the stories of the past. Let go of the fear. It's never too late to be who you really are.
If you can see it here, you can hold it here.
When we make a decision, mountains move.
We're there. That's the key. We're there.
When your mind goes there, make up your mind it's going to stay there because it is a place.
Well, hello and welcome back to Tapping into the Infinite You. And this is Coach's Corner. These segments are so much fun, and you're going to be receiving a lot of different teachings this week from our success advisors. First off, in the mornings, or our mornings, Eastern Standard Time, you're going to have Arash and Bob and Sandy giving you the daily teachings. I'm going to give you the daily assignments, and then we're back here every day for Coach's Corner at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These segments over the years have been so much fun and so well loved because you're hearing right directly from different coaches and success advisors who have transformed their entire life. And I'm so thrilled to hear from Chris Murray today. He's a great friend of mine. He's been part of Bob Proctor, and he's a close friend of Arash for several years now. He's very talented, and anyone who works with him is blessed, and he knows the material in and out. So I'm welcoming Chris here today. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Monica. I'm excited for today. You know, you were just talking about we've known each other for a while. And I remember the first time we met, it was when you and Chris came, I think it was the Science of Getting Rich event out in LA.
Yeah. Yeah. God, that feels like a lifetime ago. How long have you been here now?
What's that?
How long have you been with PGI now?
So I've been a part of PGI. I guess technically it's probably been, I really started in the material back in 2011, but I started working with Bob and PGI, I think it was 2012. So about 10 years.
10 years. Okay. Well, let's do this, Chris, because today's lesson was so powerful on paradigms, and I want to go deeper into the teachings, and we can have a great conversation around that to help anyone who's listening. But I have a lot that I want to share here in Coach's Corner, but let's jump into your story first. Let's really dive into where you were 10 years ago to where you are today. Let's take us through that journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, my background, I spent about 15 years working in the technology world. So I worked in IT and, you know, like a lot of people went to school, graduated from school. I kind of took the first job that came to me. And next thing I knew, I was working in IT. It wasn't really even what I went to school for, but it was the first job I got out of college. Mm-hmm. So I started working with IBM and next thing I knew, I was working in the technology world. And you know, like I said, I didn't really have any interest in it, but at that point, I never really thought about what my interests were. It was just kind of what I felt I was expected to do. And, you know, for me, I was just, you know, I was unfulfilled. You know, I mean, like we weren't in a horrible situation, but we weren't in the best situation. But I was certainly in a position where I was unfulfilled. And this is the same time my daughter was born. And as you know, my daughter was born with special needs, which kind of came as a surprise to us. So I think once she was born, I was at that kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired point. And I knew I needed to change something. And I knew I needed help. And it was actually Arash that I spoke to. So he's the one that I had actually reached out to. And as you mentioned earlier, you know, Arash and we grew up together. I've known him, you know, since we were little kids. And, you know, we weren't close friends when we were kids. We got to know each other later in life. But, you know, I knew where he was and I knew Arash prior to him going through and getting mentored by Bob and the changes in his life. And, you know, so I had someone that I knew and trusted that I reached out to and asked for help. And he's the one that kind of guided me down this path and kind of gave me the direction.
Yeah, that's so cool. And there's so much just from your journey that I want to share because I think a lot of people can relate to you, Chris, from intellectualizing this or just going to school and just being like, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what I should be doing. That's what I felt like. I was a hairstylist for 18 years and my parents told me my whole life, oh, you can do that forever. That's such a great career because you could work your own hours and do that forever. So I had this belief of this is what I'm doing forever. But I got to a point in my life too that I was kind of sick and tired of, you know, feeling that sensation of that tugging at my heart going, okay, you know what? I'm tired of being this way. I can't increase my income unless I work more hours. And only that I can only do so much of, right? But when you're talking about, I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure, Chris, but you've truly created freedom for you and your family. You know, you just got a new home, you know, for all of you guys. And it's beautiful, by the way. But I think with your story, so many of our clients can relate to that. So take us through how you threw out the analytical mind, and perhaps you still fight that. Arash shared that this morning. He said, you have got to throw out the analytical mind. You got to get into the spirit of your goals. How have you been doing that?
Well, I mean, I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, you know, because I think it's so easy to understand what we teach from an intellectual standpoint. And, you know, it just makes sense, you know, but again, there's always this gap between, you know, what we understand and what we actually apply. And a great example of this, I remember, you know, my first conversation with Bob. So I got on a call with Bob and he asked me, he said, well, what's the goal? And I said, well, I want to create financial freedom. And he said, great. What does that even mean? And I said, well, I want to earn millions. And he said, well, is that 1 million, 2 million, 10 million? And I didn't really have an answer. And, you know, he said, look, you might think that's a small thing, but he said, that's everything. He said, you've got to have clearly defined goals that are measurable. And I'm sure you probably experienced this a lot too. It's very easy to think we're clear on these things, but you can ask people just a couple of quick questions and pick it up pretty quick and realize they're not clear. And, that's where I was. And, Bob just said that. He said, look, he said, you're not applying this. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's the gap that most people fall into, but they don't know it. And I needed that help to see it because I wasn't seeing what I couldn't see, and it was right in front of me. So I think people are missing, it's not more information, not more knowledge, more videos, more audios. They're missing direction. They need help to find their blind spots, their gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true because it's like that crystal clear vision of where you're going. And you're right, like anyone can set a goal. Oh, I want to accomplish this, and I think I've shared this story so many times on this platform, but Bob said, just because you wrote your goal down doesn't mean you're going to create it. Now you have to live into that goal. So, it's so true, but it's got to be vivid. It's got to be clear. And that's the work that you have to do on yourself. And today with paradigms on day one, it's so essential because you have to become aware of where you're at in order to change. And the paradigm does not like change at all. Like it fights and resists any sort of change. And I think we resist change because most people don't like that. But now I embrace it. So it's so cool as you start to have that mentorship, you're right, and specialized knowledge. It speeds up the process and it helps you eliminate some insecurities and some of your weaknesses. And you really do start to live into focusing on only on what you want through your thinking.
Yeah. And I think you've done such a good job because, again, you weren't just studying the material, you lived the material. Like, I think a lot of people get stuck in the actionable side. Like, you got to get gritty. Like, you got to get down, you got to get uncomfortable. And I think the passive stuff and even the writing, like all that stuff, that's one part of it. But then you got to step into that. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck because it's uncomfortable. Like you're going to have to get uncomfortable if you're going to grow. And I think, just looking back for me, like I said, my big why was obviously my daughter, but before that, I wanted to create freedom too. It was just, I was insufficiently motivated. Like we were still paying the bills. We were still getting by. And I think, again, it's easy to say we want these things, but at the end of the day, are we willing to do the work to become who we need to become to get the things we want? And I think that's the gap. Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever someone tells me that they're comfortable, Chris, that's an indicator to me is, oh boy, this person needs some help, I used to love being in my comfort zone, but I wanted to change. I wanted to grow. But I stayed in this, right? I'm just as uncomfortable today as I was years ago when I started because I have bigger goals now and I have to get uncomfortable if I want to grow. I got to step out of this current paradigm that I'm operating with right now. And Arash challenged everyone this morning to do one thing today that they're going to get out of their comfort zone. And I love that because I don't think we challenge ourselves in that way naturally. Like we don't think, oh, this morning how can I get really uncomfortable today, right? So no one who has accomplished anything worthwhile did it in their comfort zone, right? All that matters is what's true for you, and you stay connected to that without straying away from your want, right? You're going to become this great version of yourself, but it's not the easiest thing to do at all. It really isn't getting out of your comfort zone. How do you teach clients to get out of their comfort zone? Like what kind of things do you give them to do or advise them on?
Well, we talk a lot about this internally because, like our team's so tight, so we're always challenging each other. But, I think, again, you can't run from the insecurities. You got to face them. And I was talking to a really good client of mine this morning who has, recently become one of our consultants. And we actually had a call last week and I challenged her with something because, she was definitely playing it in her safe zone. And there was a couple of things that she knew she should be doing, but she just was ignoring it. Well, not ignoring it. She just wasn't acting on it. And I just challenged her. I said that day, I want you to go out. I want you to do this video for your group and just announce this. And she ended up signing up 3 clients in the last, I think it's been about a week and a half maybe, right? But again, it's like, she's always had the ability. She always knew what to do. It's a question, why wasn't she doing it? And it's always because of the stories that we tell ourselves. And the stories are the paradigm. It's just going to rationalize and give you every excuse of why you shouldn't do it or why you should put it off. And, that's excuse my language, that's the bullshit that all of us have that is keeping us stuck in our little bubble. And the whole point is, it doesn't matter where someone is. Like, we have clients that are, 7-8 figure income earners that are stuck, right? Your comfort zone is just, you're stuck. And it doesn't matter what level you're at, stuck is stuck. And again, it always comes back to that paradigm is what's controlling us. And, I always think of the paradigm, because I am analytical and I came from IT. Like, I look at it, it's the operating system. It's really what governs our performance in life. It controls everything that we do. And it controls things like our belief in ourselves, like what we can and can't do. So I think, again, at the end of the day, we just always have to be stretching ourselves. Like, we hear these motivational quotes like get 1% better every day. And these aren't just inspiring quotes. These are truths, but we gotta apply it. And I think, again, people just need help. They need direction. And that's what I had. And it's what you had. That's what Arash had. That's what we all need.
It's so true. And I always tell anyone that I'm coaching who is needing to step out of their comfort zone, or I challenge them. I say, any forward movement is a forward movement. It doesn't have to be this grand thing you do every single day, right? We are getting that 1% better, or stepping out of our comfort zone notch by notch, right? So then over time, you're creating these quantum jumps and leaps, right? But I believe the reason also, Chris, is like our entire experience on this planet is determined how we choose to see things and perceive our reality, going, okay, I can't do this right now. But, when we really get good at observing ourselves, Arash mentioned that earlier, like really get good at observing yourself, your behaviors, like why do you do these things, And I know he asks himself a lot of questions, and he teaches our team to do this too. And I've gotten so much better at this, but I remember the year he taught me how to think, Chris, and I know that sounds so funny, but yes, I was a great student. I still am, but I wanted to really start thinking on a much higher level, a deeper level. I wanted to get to know me. So that meant studying myself. Like, I had to face some of these things, these hard truths. I had to take a look at that, my thinking, my behaviors, my triggers, what's going on. And I think once you actually do that and you allow yourself to be vulnerable in that area, the change that happens is incredible.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I mean, I think, questions are the key. Like, because it gets you to be a little bit more introspective, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's easy to watch the videos and read the books and listen to the audios. But if we're asking our questions, like Arash gave us those check-in questions, I think it was last year. And I mean, it was amazing at the results it created internally within our own team. Just asking, did I act like the person that would have achieved my goal? Did I have the attitude of someone that would have achieved my goal? And I don't think we reflect enough, and I don't think we're honest enough, and you don't want to put yourself down, like if you're not living up to that, but you got to be aware of it. And I think most people aren't aware. Like, I just don't think that we pay attention. But I think, honestly, questions are the best way to go inside and see.
Yeah. That's why today was awareness and paradigms together. Bob taught awareness and Arash taught paradigms. I mean, they pair so well because, I think Bob said it so perfectly. You can't change something until you become aware of it, right? But the paradigm, you can't change unless you're growing to a new version of yourself, right? But the paradigm resists that change. Like the repetition, Chris, it's going to be like, why do I have to repeat this over and over again? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to rewrite it? Why do I have to rewatch this? And then it comes down to what you mentioned earlier. What's the price that you want to pay for freedom? Like, you have to be willing to do that, not just read these quotes and be like, oh, that sounds really inspiring, and then throw it away. No, you got to do. It's the doing. And as we speak, there's two ways to change your paradigm, right? Through an emotional impact, which is usually negative, or how we teach, which is elite level coaching and space-based repetition. I would love for you to share a story from either Bob or Arash, something that you can look back and being like, that was a defining moment when I changed a paradigm instantly. Can you think of a story that you can share with everyone?
For sure. So going back to like what you're talking about, like, I remember with auto suggestion, because again, like to me, I was studying it and I was like, like, how can something so simple really create that much of an impact? And you know this because we make jokes about it, but like internally, like I was very resistant to doing auto-suggestion. And I'll never forget it. When I started doing that, I would write out like my form of auto-suggestion. I would almost write out like a vision of how I wanted my day to go. And it was crazy. Like within a month, like it was just, everything was lining up exactly to what I was writing down. So again, it's like, I think, like I said, it's so easy to understand this and hear this, but to sit down and do the work is the key to all this. There is no shortcut. There is no quick fix. But that doesn't mean that things can't change quickly, you know, and I think, you know, part of the side of being too analytical, I was almost trying to prove everything wrong before I would accept it. And the thing is, like, you just got to accept it. You know, Bob would have been the first one to say, you know, he used to say, I got license to brag. None of this is mine. You know, because again, this is information that has always been here, right? You can go to any source, you're going to find a lot of this information. But the key is, again, you got to apply it. You got to do it. You know, it's like, if you want to get healthy, I don't care if you read a book on what to eat and how to work out. If you're not eating right and you're not working out, it's not going to change your life. So we got to be willing to do the work.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you just said about writing out your day, right? Like daily goal, your day, your intent, where I'm going to put my intention on today, right? So it gives the paradigm no room to come in and be like, hey, look at this, look at that, right? You're staying focused, right? Gives your mind clear direction. But I'm really good at that. Like I've learned my process, and this is where elite level coaching is. Like what works for me might not work for you, Chris, or Rash, or, you know, whoever. You know, we find out what really works for us. And I know for myself, it's that short-term intent. You know, this is my intent. This is what I'm doing. And the paradigm speed, people ask, well, how long does it take to change that paradigm? It depends, right? Some are a lot quicker. Some are a lot longer. It really depends on, I guess, the deep of the core of these paradigms. Some of them are very deep, you know, and some of them are less harder to change, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. I want to shift to creating your own economy. Okay. Sure. So Arash talked about that, and we all know, right, when we're coaching our clients, it doesn't matter where they're at. Okay. What matters is us moving forward and create your own economy. And Chris, you've coached so many of our clients all over the world. And there's so many of them that want to create their own economy. However, they're being controlled by what's going on around them. And I'm always under the belief now that if one person can do it, anyone can do something. So the creation process is number one, twice, right? So number one, first, what do we want in our mind, you know, and then we focus our attention on that, and with discipline and practice over and over again. And number two, it comes into our physical world, right? So what do you do? Or is that your same process? When someone's wanting to create their own economy and their reality, the bank account is saying one thing, what advice would you give someone who's in that position?
So, you know, I love in The Science of Getting Rich, right, in chapter 4, where he talks about this, about thinking truth regardless of appearances. And he said that's the hardest work in the world to do, especially when the truth is contrary to appearances. So I personally think this is one of the biggest things that holds most people back is, you know, we say things like, I want to create financial freedom, but we're really always focused on the struggle. And, you know, so I think going back to what we were just talking about, I think, you know, writing out questions, just getting in the habit of really thinking. Like you said, when Arash finally taught you how to think, and I you know, look, if you would have told me that 12 years ago, I'm like, what in the hell are you talking about? Like, I'm thinking all the time. But we really don't think. See, because thinking is like when you know that you have the ability to create your own economy. It's not a wondering, it's a knowing. You find your process. See, and I don't think most people are looking for solutions. They're so focused on the problem. They're focused on why they can't create any financial freedom, or they can't create their own economy, or, you know, they're whatever, right? And it's just a part of their paradigm because it's the way that they've been conditioned. So they see things like, oh, the economy's tanking, I can't do it. Well, you know, the area I live in is not a good area. It's not a good environment. Well, you know, go find a new environment. So I think, again, it's like we get so emotionally involved in our stories, and, you know, we go into victimhood, right? We're just victims of ourselves more than anything. And I don't think we see it. So I think this is why we were talking about the questions are so important, to check in with ourselves to see how we're thinking. Because again, you know, like Arash says, 96 to 98% of the results, perceptions, and behaviors are subconscious. So we're doing this unconsciously. No one is consciously choosing to struggle. But again, it doesn't matter if you're consciously choosing it. It matters where you're conditioned. So again, we got to check in. We got to be honest.
Yeah. I used to feel really sorry for myself. I used to be like, oh, I feel so sorry for myself. Why is everyone else winning? And I used to wish and hope, Chris. And then I remember, I shared it earlier, but I remember Arash saying, Monica, you know, you want to be part of the problem or do you want to be part of the solution? And I was like, oh, and that's another thing about mentorship. They're going to call you out on your paradigm when it's so strong. You don't even see it, right? He created that emotional impact right away. And that's what we do on our team. Like we call each other out, you know, and in a good way, so we can stop that paradigm from constantly impacting our life. And I think when someone is also, I want to kind of go deeper into the creating your own economy, because I think also, Chris, when the current bank account or the reality saying, no, you probably can't do this, you know, who are you to do this, right? Well, that's where we have to really go inward. We have to remove those five senses, what's going on outside, and really focus on what we want with intent, but with a why. Like you mentioned your why with your daughter. Like that's kind of your wake up call. I had a certain wake up call too, being like, oh my God, I got to change something. So I think the why is so important because it's going to get you out of your comfort zone. It's going to wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning because you're fired up about doing this. And I think it's really important that not only knowing what you want to change, but why do you want to change? Like what's your why behind it? It's going to leverage you quite a bit.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think, and even with you, you know, like you and Chris, I know you guys have put yourself on the line. You put yourself on the hook. When you do that, it forces you to grow, right? Because there's no retreat. And, you know, look, we're all guilty of it. There's definitely been times where I've been playing it safe in my comfort zone. Bob called me out many times. And again, I think we just have to be willing to put ourselves on the line. And yes, that's uncomfortable. But, you know, if you're not willing to do it, the truth is you don't deserve to win. I mean, these are laws. Like we didn't choose this. This is like, you can either follow it and apply what we're teaching or you don't. Either way, it's up to you. It's your choice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've been stuck. I've plateaued. I've drifted. And it's all because, well, do I have a goal? Really? Do I really have a goal? And not only that, sometimes the paradigm is so strong, right? It's so easy to fall back into our comfort zone. But, you know, that gap, Chris, of drifting or being on a plateau is so small now from compared to when I started. So over time, through awareness and getting mentally stronger and really building up those higher mental faculties, that gap gets smaller and smaller. But like I said, I'm just as uncomfortable today as when I first started because my goals are that much bigger, but I got mentally stronger. So I know how to deal with the things that come up that try and stop me, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And you know, just outside looking, you know, because I get to watch the changes, right? And I think, again, you started playing to win. And I think most people are just playing defense. They're playing not to lose. And I think if you're going to create an amazing life, you gotta play to win. And the only way you do that is by developing yourself, creating the right paradigms. There's no shortcut.
Yeah, it's true because it takes just as much effort to lose as it does to win, really. And you know, the slide that Arash had this morning on controlling the flow, right? And the cool thing about this is that I don't think people really understand the exact same power that you have access to, I have access to anyone that you admire. People are sitting here watching us and they're like, oh, I want to achieve these goals that this person has achieved. They have access to the exact same power. The only difference from the people who are winning, they're using that power differently. Right? So, and they're seeing themselves differently. So they're believing in themselves. And that's where we have to knock that paradigm down. And I think some people name it. It's like a bully, you know, give it a name. And anytime it creeps up, say, no, you know, you can't control me. Like do what you can, play that game because you're on the battlefield with your mind every day. You want to learn how to play that game so it's not overruling you. That's why your desire to win must be stronger than that paradigm. Because if not, what's going to happen? The paradigm will always, it's going to win.
All right, always.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give everyone for the rest of the week, starting out, we're on day one, to follow through strong?
I think most importantly, do the work, do the exercises. The daily exercises are the key to all this. And, we have such a short amount of time, with everyone here. I would tell you even after these 5 days to continue working and doing these exercises, like getting clear on what you want. Like I said earlier, I think it's one of the hardest things to do, but if you can get so locked into it, you become, fused with the goal. I think that's the key to all this, because I'll never forget this. Bob said this to me one time. He said, when you study, you got to study with purpose. And he said, there's only two reasons. He said, one is to either help you get clear on what is the goal, or number two is to help you see ways in which to achieve the goal. So when you go through this week with purpose. I understand we're all busy. We all have things that we could be doing, but if you're going to do this, because I'm telling you, this could be the catalyst that changes, the rest of your life and sets you on a whole new journey. Because if you believe in anything we teach, you've already got it, but you got to learn how to use this power, and we've all got it. So just learn.
Yeah, that is so, so perfect. That was such a great takeaway for everybody. Well, thanks, Chris, for joining us. It was such an awesome time sitting down with you, as always. And you can join us again tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for day 2. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Mom.
Yep.